We are going to our next segment and secular rarity. This is all on you. Take us away.
Yeah. So, good news is for all the viewers at home, this is lighter than the last one, but still definitely upsetting. So, right now we have a handful of individuals, inmates actually, in Arkansas that are suing because, well, I don't know if anybody's aware or not, but there's a virus, a particularly bad one, that's kind of been going around the world. And even though we have like really, really well-founded, super successful treatments for it, for some reason people shun those sometimes. And one place that they did that was in an Arkansas prison. And what they decided to do, see, these prisons, right? In case you're not familiar, folks, there's a lot of people, generally they've committed a crime, not always, but they kind of live there. And so they have a doctor that hangs out, and you would think, well, okay, this person's a doctor, they should be trained, they should know, when to give vaccines or medicine to people for viruses, or give them ivermectin for COVID, even though we're just positive that that doesn't work for it. So against their will, unknowingly to these four individuals, they were treated for their COVID symptoms and their problems with ivermectin. Now, I will say this, that apparently, this particular doctor is very confident in their ability to treat COVID with ivermectin. Funnily enough, they don't have shit to prove that. So I thought this was the best quote in the article from Gary Sullivan, who is the legal director for the ACLU of Arkansas, said, "No one, including incarcerated individuals, should be deceived and subject to medical experimentation." Now, I know when we hear about people doing bad things to criminals, oftentimes we dismiss it easier. We think, oh my gosh, they've done bad things. Of course. Let me just say this. I personally, I don't give a damn what crime you commit. That does not void your humanity. And we should be absolutely making sure that when somebody does something wrong, instead of just punishing them and driving them into the ground, we should rehabilitate them. We should use science and medicine that we know fucking works. We don't need to experiment. We don't need to lie to them. We need to treat them like humans and bring them back into our society. And I'm excited, honestly. I'm glad that this lawsuit is going forward. I hope it gets a lot of attention, and I hope we change some stuff up in our prisons and our jails. What do y'all think?
Word, word,
Yeah, I
word,
have to
word.
say it. I totally agree with you. I never thought I was going to be supporting inmates for something, but as you said, they are still human and they have all the right to sue in this case, and I'm going to support their right to do so. Uh, Once again, as you said it, a lot of bad people in there. We tend to forget that they are humans, but nope, they are still people and they deserve basic human rights. Yeah, even the worst of the worst, even if we don't like it. But a lot of people are in there, and not because they are awful, just sometimes stuff happens, and there have been wrongly incarcerated people as well. So we should be careful in there. And as you said, yeah, they, we want them to be punished all the time, but if we have learned something is that people don't get better by being punished. Violence only generates violence, and experimenting on them is such an extremely violent act against their own humanity, against their human rights. It's awful, it's disgusting, it's terrible. And once again, I understand if you are really upset at criminals. I can totally share that because of many reasons, but these people are still humans, and being awful people doesn't take their humanity away, and it doesn't take their human rights away.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
done.
It's funny because the crew just put in a message. It was literally the exact statistic I was about to bring up, which is that the United States has 22% of the world's prison population. Okay.
I was going to mention the same.
Right. So, I could talk. I mean, this isn't the platform for me to do it. I could talk a lot about prison reform. Okay. I have a lot of strong thoughts about prisons in this country, the private prison industrial complex that we got going on here is pretty bad.
That
okay?
part, yes.
That part of it. Yeah. So not going to get into that, but what I will talk about is, of course, how we handle healthcare in this country, specifically when it comes to incarcerated individuals. They don't have necessarily the state do it. In this case, it was actually the state, but depending on the prisons, their healthcare systems are going to vary. It's not necessarily going to be that. It's going to be private healthcare, and sometimes that means, like it was for this case, that you're going to get private doctors who just can really have all the power to do their own thing in their prescriptions and in their treatment plans. Now, of course, there's a reason why we have med school. We want to trust all the doctors that are out there and with their individual treatment plans. And we want to trust that we know what they're doing. But in this particular case, this is a doctor who is going against the norm. And this isn't something that we're saying just because this is a political talking point. I mean, Ivermectin has been approved for emergency treatment, specifically in countries like Japan and other places worldwide. But specifically in that, it's emergency treatment. It's not usually a first line of defense. Most people who practice healthcare seem to agree with this. I'm not a doctor myself. I can't tell you that specifically, but from everything that I've read, ivermectin is not usually your first go-to. Now, you have to ask yourself, why is this animal deworming medicine being used in this particular way? Now, the article itself doesn't say this, but I have a feeling, okay, and it's just a feeling, considering this is an Arkansas prison, and that it's this time of the year and this part of the country, that maybe there's some political motivations being specifically involved. Okay. If you're not familiar, the QAnon movement has talked a lot about ivermectin and other, shall we say, related communities as a sort of miracle cure for the COVID-19 virus, and of course, to the detriment of pretty much everybody who's been taking this now. Now, the good thing is a doctor that's actually treating patients like this are probably going to be doing it in responsible doses. So that's actually okay enough that a real legit doctor is seeing these people, because the big cases that you're seeing right now of people filling up with hospitals and stuff is usually people getting that medication outside of the regular sort of channels. So we can at least say, well, okay, that's all right. But it's still not great that they were given that as their option, right? So we shouldn't expect those people to have the best understanding of how to treat COVID, especially if you're in a prison, you don't get the opportunity to use the internet and read up on all this shit. So they have to trust whatever they're being given is being what's right for them, right? And that's a conversation that we as private individuals get to have with our doctors and figure it out. Not so much when you're in the prison system, right? You don't have as many choices there. You don't always get to have a second opinion on stuff in the way that you want to. So this is very, very unfortunate. Shouldn't happen. It says a lot about America. That's my take.
You said a mouthful, Dan, and what you said. But I guess also I just wanted to add that what is very sad and tragic about this story is that when you look at doctors, as we all mentioned, that you look at a doctor as a person that you trust, that you give, basically your mind and body to diagnose you correctly and treat you correctly for whatever type of dis-ease that you happen to possess. And that's exactly what did not happen here. And when I was going through the article and it's looking up a little bit more about the doctor specifically, is that he was he had his own Facebook page where he was touting how wonderful ivermectin is and how he took it himself and how he also gave it to his family members, and so it's really cool for you to give ivermectin to people who absolutely have COVID, and no, and I mean and here's the thing, this is an American doctor who is supposed to go under certain guidelines when it comes to medicine, and and one of the things that the doctors have is this thing called a Hippocratic Oath. I don't know if you ever heard about it. You know what I'm saying? And the first part about it is do no harm. do no harm. That is exactly what did not happen here because, like, the prisoners that were treated with the ivermectin also complain about, really bad side effects, stomach cramps, bloody stools. And, and there are even reports where if you're given too much ivermectin, you can die. And he was absolutely putting these prisoners' lives in jeopardy. According to the article, in the lawsuit, one plaintiff who was just over 6 feet tall and 191 pounds at the time was given 36 milligrams of ivermectin on the first day of his treatment, followed by a 24 milligram dose per day for the next 3 days, totaling up to 108 milligrams. And unsurprisingly, this amount of ivermectin is 6 times the recommended dose for deworming purposes. And previous studies on its use in COVID had rarely surpassed 14 milligrams per day. So he just dousing the fuck out of these prisoners just because in his mind, and also because it has been politicized with QAnon and other people, Dan, that you mentioned follows this particular movement, that this is cool to actually give to people and it's a miracle drug, but it's not. It's absolutely very problematic. And like I was even mentioning that, the person that we're talking about, his name is Dr. Rob Karras, and he said that he had success using ivermectin. But the thing about it is that these are just claims that he is making, that he has made rather. There is nothing that says or any type of, like, a study that can even corroborate his success that he had with COVID treatment. And it's kind of it's
Yep.
crazy.
The anecdote from a doctor is still anecdote.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's just using those people as guinea pigs. And guys, why is that whenever we see one of these awful, crazy conspiracy theories, it's always the extremist right-wing groups, the ones that are creating it? And how can they get to the brain of a doctor, and they have rotten their brain so much that he's doing something as awful as this? I mean, it's a treatment for worms, not for viruses. You are a freaking doctor. How don't you know the difference between a parasite and a virus? You should know this. You should understand that. But he, as you said, most likely is due to political reasons, and maybe he is trying to get a name for himself, but he's going to use his own power, and he's going to turn these prisoners into guinea pigs. And yeah, this tell us awful things, not only about this doctor, but also about the whole system. And about that number, I wanted to mention that I found this interesting meme on Facebook that said, under Stalin, repression was so severe that Soviet Gulag held 22% of war's entire population. Just kidding, that's in the United States today. And a friend of mine answered, I love this, what do you expect when you privatize your criminal system? And guys, I've heard that a lot of people, a lot of jails have innocent people over there, and they are there just because they give money to their population. And that's why there are so many people in jail, because the system needs the money. And that's why the health in there is not good. And that's why this type of, should I call him scammer? I don't know. Maybe it's a real doctor and just crazy, I don't know. But these type of people can have all this power and can do this with people because they don't see people as people. They see people as property or people as assets. I don't know. And thinking that this doctor felt that he had like the perfect group of guinea pigs to see if COVID was going to be cured by this. It's a dewormer, right? A parasite killer.
Yeah.
For me, it's a crime against humanity. It clearly goes against all human rights that you as a person can have, and even inmates, they are still humans. I mean,
just
really,
to be clear,
sorry.
the ivermectin has been used on humans for various reasons, right? So it's like it's not completely unfounded, but the problem is it's just not an FDA approved treatment specifically for COVID-19. That is the big problem with this, right?
My problem is that this is something that kills parasites, not viruses. So use something that kills parasites for killing viruses is like using an aspirin to fight a virus. Yeah, I cannot think of better examples.
And we do have I mean, Dan is correct that yes, we know that ivermectin can be used in humans for stuff, and it has been effective and safe in various treatments. But especially on this, I mean, folks, we know what to do. This isn't difficult. Go take the vaccines. Go get the damn booster. Wear your masks. Wash your hands. We know this. We know this, folks. And when I first read this one, I saw a thread between our first article and this one, and I hope other people see it too, which is the unchecked authority in both situations. The fact that somebody has the absolute total, I'm the dude. You can't go above me. I say it gets done. That leads to problems time and time again, folks. And whether it's a doctor in a jail without somebody to talk to him, whether it's a freaking Pope of the Catholic Church, whether it doesn't matter. Boy Scout troop leader, it doesn't matter. When somebody else is not there to double, triple check us, it just seems that the worst of the worst starts to happen. So let's freaking do something about this already. Like we can fix it. We absolutely can. Do we want to?
Hashtag accountability matters. And even like and I'm just gonna piggyback on what you were mentioning about, what we know what to do. We even have proven treatments for people who happen to get infected with COVID-19 and their symptoms become very severe. Like I talked about this a few times before, about my mother having COVID, and she was a pretty severe case because she was hospitalized. But they actually use standard recommended treatments for her COVID infection, and it worked. And also because she was vaccinated, the virus did not go completely mad in her system, and she was able to recover despite being immunocompromised. So I will have to say hello and yay for science, and we need more people to actually concede to science instead of their own personal, emotional, political. I don't even really understand why this whole situation and this whole infection has been politicized. It makes no sense to me. But I'm going to leave it at there, and then we're just going to go ahead and this wrap this bad boy up. Secular regular Rarity, you brought us in. Can you give us two more cents?
Yeah,
Before we
that's
move
right.
on?
I brought us into this. I can take us out. But no, I think we all really touched on it well, and I do hope that we see this as a community of humanists, as people that just give a shit about each other and want to try to make the world a better place. This is a really good way to put our money where our mouth is, right? If we're willing to stand up and say you don't get to treat criminals like that. They deserve the same human rights. Like, okay, maybe they don't get to go out to the movies on the weekends, or the roller coaster parks or whatever. Like, fine. But they don't deserve to be frickin' medical experiments just because some dickhead doesn't agree with medical science. That's not right, folks.
No, it ain't. No, it ain't.